Chapter 9. One of the maids shrieked the moment she came in. At first I thought she had screamed in delight at the sight of so much gold, but no, her eyes were fixed on me. I looked down at myself and saw that I was covered in soot, as well as streaked all over from the blood Rhys's hands had left on me during our embrace. The king didn't notice my bedraggled appearance. He rushed past me and fingered each spindle of gold. It wasn't until he had counted and recounted each spool of gold that he turned his attention on me and surveyed my appearance.
"She is filthy," he muttered to the servants. "Take her to get washed and clean while the room is filled again. Make her look like the queen she will be, if she spins for me one last time."
What lies! Did he expect anyone with any semblance of common sense to believe that he would be satisfied with a paltry 3 evenings' worth of spinning? He would expect gold every day for the rest of my life, just as Mildred expected from Rhys. The pressing fatigue from not sleeping for 2 days and nights led me to obey the maids propelling me from the room. I was shown to a dressing room with a steaming bath, fragrant oils scenting the air. Beautiful gowns and jewels were laid out, mine for the taking, but I didn't want any of it. All I wanted was to be back in our humble village with Rhys. All the soot and blood melted off me as soon as I stepped into the tub. My hair's golden sheen returned, my skin became perfectly smooth and flawless. I looked perfect, and I hated it. When people looked at me, they never saw me, they merely saw a pretty face. I was never seen as anything else. My old dress had been taken away, probably burned, and I slowly picked out the plainest dress available. A young woman came in to style my hair, and I sat mutely in front of the vanity mirror, staring unseeingly as the lass wound my hair into intricate braids and pinned them on top of my head. I didn't even react as she pinched my cheeks to bring color to them. I felt numb to the world. How had I lost control of my life so completely?
"Miss? Miss?"
The maid's voice barely registered.
"You have a visitor."
I groaned. I didn't want to see the greedy king who had claimed me just as if I were an ox for sale, and put to work just as readily. "I am very tired," I responded. "Can't he wait? Or is he so desperate for gold that I am not allowed to rest?" The maid wrinkled her nose in confusion.
"His Majesty isn't here to see you. It is your father."
"Papa?" Of course. His order had been for me to meet him for tea. "Show him in." The chambermaid opened the door, and Papa walked through the door, wringing his hands while his face fell with each step he took. "We would like some privacy, please," I told the maid, and she scurried out, latching the door as she left. Papa didn't meet my eyes, but I could feel the misery emanating from him.
"So it's true?" he asked softly.
"Is what true?"
"You love Rhys."
The mere sound of his name caused my heart to leap inside my chest. "I do. I tried to tell you before, but the king—" Papa nodded.
"Rhys showed up this morning, puffing like he'd run for miles and hands bleeding like mad. He gave me these."
Papa withdrew the promise ring, the letter, and Mother's necklace from a vest pocket.
"And told me everything."
I gently took the promise ring and placed it back around my thumb. The warm band felt comforting, back where it belonged. "You believe him?"
"Meg."
Papa opened my letter to Rhys and scanned it. I felt acutely embarrassed to have him read the words I'd meant only for Rhys's eyes.
"I never meant for you to be cursed. Please know that. I never intended for you to have no say in your life. I thought you were happy."
"I know, Papa. We didn't want to tell you because you wanted an advantageous marriage for me. We've been trying to save—"
"Maggie."
Papa's voice was incredibly gentle.
"My first and only priority is your happiness. I wish you would have told me earlier. I had no idea. I will admit, I didn't want to believe Rhys at first, but he convinced me to speak to you before your wedding. I thought that a luxurious life was what you wanted. Please, darling, tell me what you want.
I want Rhys. My throat choked up. I would rather die than marry the king. I don't love him, and I never will. I would be miserable my whole life if I was forced to marry him.
I would never force you to marry someone you didn't want to. I would never allow anyone to force you.
Papa seemed shocked that I would even suggest it.
You never said anything.
Tears welled up in my eyes. I was afraid you would tell me to never see Rhys again, and I would be forced to obey. Papa covered his face, twisted in anguish.
I never knew, he moaned. Oh, what have I done?
He lowered his hands.
Meg, I am so sorry.
My heart wept for him, even as I contemplated the future horrors in store for me, knowing that the king would never let me go. But if Papa could release the curse's hold on me, perhaps there was hope after all. Papa drew his hands down his face, looking even more miserable than he did each time festival week came around and he remembered Mama's death.
He said you planned to tell me that day.
The day the king came, yes. I finished the sentence for him, then confessed. Rhys and I actually planned to run away if I ever got engaged to someone I didn't want to marry. But I couldn't. Papa's face fell even further, until he looked sadder than an old basset hound who had lost a rabbit on a hunt.
You wanted to run away from me?
I didn't mean it like that, Papa. He shook his head.
Yes, you did, and I deserve it. No daughter should feel like she should have to hide her marriage from her father.
He clasped my hands, his eyes alive in earnest.
Meggie, if you love Rhys, we can figure out a way. I want you to be happy, and this will be my final order to you. Meg, from this day on, only make your own decisions. You never have to obey me again.
A sensation of a great weight being lifted from my chest lightened my entire frame and blossomed within my chest, and I dared to hope that my curse had at least been lessened, even if not fully removed. But the king—
May the devil take the king,
Papa spat, sounding unlike his usual amiable self.
If I had known—
He sighed, then collapsed onto the stool I had recently vacated, staring at the necklace and the letter he still had clutched in his hands.
Do you think if you explain things to him—
His voice trailed off. He thinks I can spin straw into gold, Papa, and he has 2 nights of proof to back it up. He won't let me go. I already asked before he got the gold that first night. Papa groaned. Where is Rhys? Papa shook his head.
I don't know. He came with me to see you, but then disappeared.
Fear gnawed at my stomach. What if something happened to him and I didn't know? The maid knocked and re-entered the room. Begging your pardon, miss, but my orders are to take you to the gardens. The gardens? I repeated stupidly. She bobbed an apologetic curtsy. His Majesty said that he will take you for a stroll. She smiled sappily. Romantic, no? Not romantic in the slightest. I didn't want to go anywhere with that monster. But whether I wanted to or not, I knew I didn't have much choice. A vivid recollection of being dragged up to the tower, kicking and screaming the whole way, flashed through my mind. Papa and I exchanged sad looks, and I rose to comply. Papa made to accompany me, but the guards crossed their spears in front of him.
Just the girl,
the one on the left growled. I cast a reassuring smile back to Papa and trudged after the maid, who was bobbing along like a cork in the water, bouncing with every step. How could she have such energy with Drupert around, sucking the life out of anyone and everyone? She led me past a housekeeper bustling the other way, complaining to another servant.
Then come morning I couldn't find that dratted man anywhere. He seems to have vanished into thin air without sweeping a single chimney.
With every swish of the sumptuous material about my feet, I was reminded that, though I was clad in the richest garments money could buy, I was just as much a prisoner as if I had been locked in the dungeons. Since Papa had told me to make my own decisions, I should have the liberty to run, shouldn't I? But if I did, I doubted I would be able to make it far before guards stopped me. Besides, what would happen to Papa if I ran off? With him here, it wasn't just my own safety at risk. His was now, too. King Drupert was waiting for me in the entrance hall. He eyed me appreciatively, as though congratulating himself on procuring a particularly fine new stallion, eyes roving up and down my front. I almost expected him to circle me as he appreciated his latest acquisition. He extended his arm to me, and I placed my fingers as lightly as possible on his elbow, trying to conceal how utterly repulsive I found my monarch.
"Fine day,"
he commented. He pulled me along as he veritably skipped down the grand stone staircase that led from the castle to the gardens. The sun's rays beamed down, lighting up the flowers exploding with color, and painting rainbows in the merrily dancing water of the fountains. But it all looked dull and gray in my eyes. I remained quiet, hating the man at my side and refusing to make conversation with my captor.
"These gardens are the finest in the 7 realms," Drupert noted. "Soon they will be even grander."
I kept my jaw clamped tight shut, and my neck grew even more rigid when I saw Benedict sitting on a stone bench to the side of the path where Drupert and I were headed, jotting notes into a ledger. I hastened to examine a flower bed, anything to avoid eye contact with the captain. I felt sure that it was his big mouth that had landed me in this predicament. I couldn't decide who I was angrier with, Drupert for being such an appalling, greedy human being, or Benedict for selling me out to such a person when I had trusted him. The captain stood and bowed.
"Good morning, Your Majesty."
I felt the curiosity in his eyes burning into the side of my head, but I still couldn't bring myself to look at him. He had seen the way Rhys and I were together during festival week, had even made me think that he cared about us staying together. Yet that hadn't prevented him from offering me up to the man possessively wrapping his hand around my waist. My skin crawled.
"Ah, Captain, have you met my bride-to-be yet?"
I hardened my gaze as I stared at a lizard scampering merrily across a boulder, unaware of his freedom that I craved so desperately.
"Yes, I have. It is a pleasure to see you again, Meg."
The use of my name was what finally made me whip my head up to glare at him, flames snapping in my eyes. He had no right to call me by my first name, as if we were friends. How could he be so casual when he knew that he had sold me out? Benedict seemed taken aback by the cold fury I emanated, and cocked his head. I frowned, torn between giving him a severe tongue-lashing for what he had done, and continuing the silent treatment that was giving me such satisfaction.
"Mute women make the best wives, do they not?"
Drupert crowed and chuckled triumphantly.
"I am a fortunate man."
My insides crawled as if infested by spiders. I tried to wrench my hand away from him, but he was too strong for me and kept my hand locked around his elbow. He raised a warning eyebrow at me and continued to lead me through the gardens. I wondered what the punishment would be for striking the king across his pompous face, as my hand itched to do. Benedict followed a few steps behind us, and I threw him a dirty look as Drupert continued to prance me through the courtyard, showing me off to every dignitary or nobleman he met, as if I was a prize show dog.
"How are the wedding plans coming along?"
Benedict asked. I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. "Much too quickly for my taste, thanks to you," I spat. Benedict's eyebrows contracted slightly. Then he schooled his face into an expression of calm passivity. His betrayal rankled me. He didn't care if I was auctioned off and sold to a man who cared not for me, but only for what he thought I could produce. I hated him. Drupert waggled a finger reprovingly at me in the most obnoxious and self-righteous of ways.
Dearest. That is no way to talk to the captain of the guard. You just be the charming girl I know you can be, and we will have no problems. Or must I add more straw to your room tonight?"
There it was again, Drupert treating me like a unit of production, Nothing more. It was a relief when I was finally allowed to leave the two men and return to my room to collapse onto the bed. Papa had disappeared, and only after I pressed every maid for information was I told that my father had been sent to stay at an inn down the road. Guards remained stationed outside my door, and I knew that in the bright sunshine, any attempt at trying to escape out the window would be immediately noticed. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, wishing that Papa or Rhys was there to keep me company and plot an escape. Once I was put into the tower room, I would be able to climb down from the window under the cover of darkness. Shudders ran through my body as I remembered the dizzying height. Could I trust myself to do so without falling? It wasn't until more than an hour of complete silence had passed that fatigue finally set in, and I slept.